I Don't Know Yet is not affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. The content put forth are the thoughts, opinions, and experiences of the host and guests. It is meant to be suggestive only and is in no way a reflection on how to work the steps in any fellowship or how to work any other recovery program. Okay, we are back. We're with Shayne today. Hi, Shayne.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I'm really happy to have you here. It's interesting. In the first few episodes, obviously, right, I grabbed people that I talk to all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And what's been really awesome is as we do more episodes, now I'm starting to communicate more with people that I don't talk a lot to.
Yeah.
Right. So I've seen you in the rooms. I've heard you. We're friends online. Like, you have such a great message to share, but we don't have that personal relationship yet. So I'm really excited that you could come do this. So,
Me too.
thanks. So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about recovery. We're talking about experience. We're talking about whatever we start talking about.
Perfect. Yes. After we were talking about different topics, I do really think that it'll be great to just talk about what happens after the first couple of years, right? I see a lot of people that are in the rooms for quite a while, and then something changes, and then we're lucky if we see them again. And all the ones that we do see come back and say that it's never gotten any better out there. So I just think that sharing our experiences about just kind of the ongoing growth and how you can't ever stop trying to get better every day is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. So I don't know, let's just shoot the shit. Talk to me about kind of, maybe give people just kind of a quick little summary of how you got sober, how you got into the rooms, where you're at now, and we'll just go from there.
Okay, how I got sober. Hi, y'all. My name is Shayne. I'm a member of recovery. How I got sober was through a lot of pain prior to detox and treatment. I was homeless in the streets of downtown Calgary, living in shelters, living on the street for about 2.5 years. And that's kind of where my higher power creator found me. He came into my life or brought me into recovery through some amazing men and women through church. Not many people know this about me, but I'm a new believer. I was baptized about 6 years ago, just prior to coming into recovery. So that's how my recovery started, was through the church and through the Bible. That alone wasn't enough to keep me sober, but it was an amazing start for me to meet some amazing people that showed me a kindness and a love like I've never seen before. My past is full of darkness, pain, violence, jails. So to meet these people that just seen something in me and brought me into their homes and their lives and with their families was a huge thing for me to get a good. That was my first conception of this is what God could do for me. So I went to detox a few months after being baptized and going to church and stuff. I went to detox, I went to treatment, and then God brought me to the 12 steps. Yeah. And that's where kind of my journey began. What was your next question, kind of?
I honestly have no idea. I don't remember. I was just so engulfed in what you were saying. Just keep it going.
Okay.
So then you found the 12 steps.
Then I found the 12 steps, and that's what that was a big thing that I think I was missing through the church and through the program I was doing, recovery program was doing through them. There wasn't a lot of guidance or directions through that process, and the 12 steps gave me. These are the things you do when you're feeling like this. These are the prayers you say. This is how you seek God more so than just pray and Jesus will take away and forgive. Nothing against my Christian brothers and sisters that have their own way, but I'm a real deal junkie alcoholic, and that didn't work for me. I needed more structure. I needed more direction. I needed, this is exactly how you recover, and this is exactly how you um, not feel the way you're feeling, not act the way you're acting. And that's what the 12 steps has done for me. A little bit. It's done so much more, but yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Awesome. I'll give you just kind of like a little bit of background of mine as well. So, um, the first time I ever went into treatment was after I lost a relationship. And I didn't see it then, but looking back on it now, I really do see that I just did it to win this person back. I didn't actually have any desire to grow, change my behavior, do all the things necessary to get propelled into this new life. And so, of course, it didn't stick. And then I was back out for 13 years. I got myself into a pretty negative situation. I was, illegal activities and just some criminal behavior. And at the end of my addiction, it was so bad. I was broken, hopeless, and completely suicidal. I'd go on these benders for days, and then I'd pass out for a full day. And when I woke up, I just felt like I was crawling in my own skin. I just felt very, very suicidal. The world and everyone would be better off without me. It was just this impending doom.
Spiritual
All of the
malady.
time, 100%.
Yeah.
And so when I would pour myself a 5-shot drink, right? I'd have a hoot, and the only way I can describe it is it was like I could breathe again. It was like my coffee and cigarette in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And so the last year and a half of my active addiction, I really just believe I was self-medicating, right? I got myself to a point. I never felt high anymore. I never felt drunk anymore. I felt sober. I felt normal,
Yeah.
right? And then so I got myself into a lot of trouble because of the criminal activity that I was involved in. And then I ended up going through a channel where I was court mandated to come into recovery. And so that was really hard for me because I had already tried this thing before, right? And I'm like, it didn't work then because I wasn't ready. Now you're telling me I have to go. I'm not ready. How am I possibly supposed to do this? When I'm not ready, you're pushing me into doing this. And so ultimately I decided that I was going to give it a try. And with this court mandated program, super accountable, a lot of stuff to it, like a lot of big, big, deep consequences if you didn't follow through.
Yeah.
So I had made a promise to myself, and I said, if I have to stay sober for this long, then why wouldn't I try what they're putting in front of me? Right. And so that's how I ended up in detox. And then I ended up in treatment and got a sponsor and did the steps and hit the rooms and all this stuff. And it really just, I love being able for people who don't suffer from the disease of addiction or alcoholism, who do watch this show, being able to explain to them and have them understand what the hell a spiritual malady really is and how it affects us. So let's get your take on it. Like when someone says, what's a spiritual malady? What does that mean to you?
Well, the spiritual malady to me means you kind of explained it. You were just getting high to feel normal. You were just trying to mask those shame, that guilt, that fucked up feeling that you felt right when you were not high or drunk. I really like what you said there. You stated something like, that made me feel normal. I didn't even feel high or drunk anymore. And I think that's what we do, right? That's why I used to for the last 5 years, was to medicate the spiritual malady. Alcohol and drugs, I learned early on in my recovery, aren't my problem. They were not my problem. They were a solution to my real problem. I have a spiritual malady. I feel fucked up. I think fucked up. I don't know how to communicate healthy. It goes back into the literature of the book I follow, and it's restless, irritable, discontent until I can again get that sense and ease and comfort. Yeah, getting higher or drinking made me feel better. And the process in the 12 steps, that's what it's about. It's about digging into those behaviors, those beliefs, those values, those ideas, all those the criminal ways, all the negative shit that I was raised to believe, has to be smashed. And it states something like a whole new set of conceptions has to dominate us. And that's the beautiful thing about the process of the 12 steps is it allows us to recreate our lives because I came into recovery. I didn't want my old life back. My old life was full of pain, fear, jails, crime, hurting the ones I love the most, right? So that's where we come to what does it take to be around recovery for years? Well, my sponsor taught me that we have two types of bottoms in recovery. The first bottom is when I come in humiliated from the dope, the liquor, and I just want to get clean off of the substance, right? But if we do stay around long enough, and keep those three principles in our lives, openness, willingness, and honesty, we will hit that second bottom. And that's the bottom of self, the bottom of defects, the bottom of my attitude and behavior still causing calamity and hurting the ones I love. And that's a beautiful bottom. And that's where the emotional recovery for me really started, when I was able to truly see self. Self was the problem. Self is still the problem after almost a handful of years around. But that's okay. I kind of like today when my defects come out. Maybe not in the moment for the first few hours, depending on the situation, a day, a week. But I believe that's God showing me and giving me gifts, showing me more about myself, and I really believe that it's all about my part in most situations. My part is the most important, whether it's a big part to play, whether it's just being around somebody, and or whether it's my part in being harmful to somebody. I always try to look at my part today because that's the most important, and I do have a part to play in every kind of disturbance I'm faced with and challenged with.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that. I remember somebody once told me, and I found it such a great analogy to use to connect the dots for people. So, like, the spiritual malady is like a pie. So imagine you have a pie that's cut into 10 pieces.
Yeah.
Take 2 pieces away. You still have most of a pie, but it's not whole, right? That is what I've come to understand is the problem with our thinking, right? We're not insane. We're not crazy, right? The insanity is that we don't have the capacity to think at a whole level, right? So because we have those pieces missing, we are selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, manipulative, right? All of these character defects that compound. And because we don't have this whole capacity and we act out in these things, that's when it gets too hard to deal with life. Restless, irritable, discontent, turn to another solution. So, I really liked, I was actually just chatting with somebody that I haven't seen in a while in the rooms, and he was in and out, and now he's trying again. And he had finally gotten honest with himself and just said, I know that I have some closed-minded behaviors, and I know that I think that I know everything, and I'm trying really hard, but it's hard to reach out because I'm trying to come to terms with the fact that I don't know everything. So I explained this to him, and I said, look, you have 2 pieces missing, okay? You cannot think correctly. It doesn't matter if you're a day sober, a week sober, 10 years sober. It doesn't matter what step you're on. It doesn't matter how recovered you are. We're never cured of this thing, right? Your brain does not function like a normal person's brain, period. Everything you think is wrong, okay?
Yeah.
How we fill that is with God and 12-step people.
Yeah.
That's how we pause. That's how we see and look at, and that's how we grow. And he's like, oh my God, I really like that. And I'm like, yeah, like just accept that that's a part of what you have. Yeah. You cannot recover without God and other people. You just, at least that's been my experience.
Mine
right?
too, yeah.
Yeah. But I just really like the way that it's like, I love analogies.
That pie analogy, yeah, no, it works.
Yeah. Speaking of analogies, I want to talk about the newspaper analogy.
Okay.
My service sponsor taught me this a couple of years ago, and it's just brilliant. I just love it. So here is the steps in an analogy form. Step 1, you're in a room, no windows, no doors, it's just black. Step 2, an outline of light shows around a closed door. And now you realize there is actually an exit out of that room. In step 3, you open the door and say, God, I give up. I will do whatever you need me to do. Come into my life and help me fix this. God goes, I'd love to come into your room, but your room is full of shit. You have some work to do.
Yeah.
So you turn around and imagine you are a newspaper hoarder. So you turn around and your room is just full, stacks all the way to the roof of newspapers, your resentments, your harms to others, your sex conduct, your guilt, your shame, all your stuff. So in step 4, you sit down and you start organizing your piles. You don't need any new ones, right? They're already all in there. You're just organizing them.
Yeah.
In step 5, you ask another person to just kind of sneak in. And then you and this other person and God start picking up newspapers and shipping them out of the room. So in step 6, you have lots of room in there now. Your room's not empty, right? You still have character defects. You still have your 8s and 9s. You still have all that stuff. But there's room now. And you ask God in 6 to come into your room and help you. And then in 7, right, you're asking to work with God in this room on how to not have more newspapers coming in.
Yeah.
In 8 and 9, you and God pick up more newspapers. You're shipping them out of the room. By the time you hit 10, your room should be pretty empty. God should be able to be surrounded in your room, right? And the point of step 10 is to stand guard at the door and stop the newspaper kid from throwing newspapers into your room.
Yeah.
Right? And if you miss a couple because you're too busy dealing with something else, or maybe you forget or have lack of awareness, step 11s are supposed to be the next best thing. And then step 12 is just giving all of this information back to others and helping others empty their rooms. So what I really found for myself in the years after my first year, I did such a great job because I was so willing, because of this court mandated program, to give it everything I had. I cleared so much shit out of my room from 4 through 9. My room was so empty. It was great. It was beautiful. I had this beautiful connection to my higher power. I felt good for the first time. And then I walked completely away from my door and did my own thing for a while, right? I didn't see that there was constantly newspapers being thrown back into my room.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've noticed with a lot of people that struggle several years in, is that they forget, right? We stop doing the work and they forget. And then you don't notice it when you have, imagine like every 10's just a little stone that you put in your pocket. You're not going to notice when you have 5 or 10, but when you have 400, it's going to be pretty freaking heavy.
Yeah.
And so what happened to me is that I wasn't watching these 10s, and the more that my newspapers built up again, the more I pushed God out. And so I reached a point where I was praying till the cows came home, and I was asking for help. But I had no connection to God. So like how can he help when I've pushed him away?
Yeah.
Right? And so it was really getting humble and accepting that I still had so much work to do, and reaching out to others, and then getting that room clear again. And I really love that example.
Yeah, no, it really made sense to me, and I liked it too. It's a quick way to give somebody, this is what the steps are, and a broken down understanding for sure. Yeah, no, that was a great analogy.
Yeah, I love it. Do you have any life experience when it comes to pedal to the metal on the work and then the complacency sets in?
Oh, 100%. That's been my 6 years in recovery, has been go hard for a year and a half, 2 years, and then rest on my laurels. We get comfortable, right? The book calls it self-satisfied with life, and we just move on. We get the job, we get the relationship, we get some security financially, we get a nice place to live. For me, those things were huge, right? Because I came from years of jails, institutions, and ODing and homelessness. So, of course, after a couple years of having these things, I felt like at times that I did these things, or I was just good where I was at.
You're like, I made it. I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what helped me in each of those times, I had a relapse my first year and a half into recovery. I came into recovery in 2018 and had a relapse in 2020. For one day, I went out for, not even a day, a 5-hour stint. And it was because, why did I relapse? I relapsed because of, well, you hear this a lot of time, and I can only bring it back to this. I stopped praying. I started resenting again. I started judging, blaming, disliking my fellows, and thinking I knew better. the true definition of taking my self-will back, right? In various areas. Me not staying open and willing to see other people's perspectives, to watch for those defects, I will get high. I strongly believe the malady, the defects, if not medicated, I will be high. I know that for a fact. I feel it so deeply because my defects, I allowed my defects back. I didn't work on my defects. And a month later, I was high after a year and a half of deep recovery, of digging in, of being sponsored, of sponsoring, of going to 5 meetings a week. Like, that was a beautiful time. I pulled back for a month and allowed those ego, ignorance, pride, and fear to creep back in, and didn't medicate it by the tools I had. And I was high. I made. I don't want to call it. I made the choice because it's not. It wasn't a choice for me. My willpower, I only have a small, I have a big willpower today, but my willpower is only to seek and do my Creator's work. I don't have willpower to not drink. So, yeah, I got high for a day and came back within the next day and dug back in.
That's probably one of the most impressive things I've ever heard. I got to be honest. So many people, once the malady takes a hold, right? The book says they're baffled a lot. And you're so right. We don't choose to pick up. That's why we're addicts, right?
Yeah.
It's the drug of no choice, right? The malady essentially turns to the obsession, and we can't help ourselves but
Yeah.
to pick up. But so many people go out and we just never see them again.
Yeah, they don't
and
come
the
back.
ones that we're lucky enough to see come back so much worse off than when they left. What a gift that you had. You've been given the experience of that
Yeah.
without it really destroy. Like, what a gift
Yeah.
that you got.
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful
Yeah.
for that little relapse slip, whatever
Yeah.
you want to use. But yeah, no, I'm grateful because so many sponsees and various friends in this fellowship go out for the day and they don't come back for a year. They don't come back. I just lost a sponsee for the first time to
It's hard.
overdose about a year ago, and that's what we're fucking talking about here, right? It's
Life and death.
yeah, that's why I have to grind so hard to wake up every morning and do this routine of prayer, meditation, reading the books, giving it away, battling self when self shows its ugly face. I have to do these things because still today for me, it's life or death. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that really helps for people to understand what it's like to come in and then go out. So you are essentially like a ski jump, right? Some people can, drink and use for 40 years before it's a problem. Some people can only use for a couple of years, right? The angle of your ski jump is based on a bunch of factors that I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? My ski jump looked like this, and I went down like this fast for a while, and then it got like down pretty quick. What people need to understand is when an addict or an alcoholic is on that downward spiral, when they stop, they stay. It's not like while we're doing work, we're crawling back up the mountain to a point where we can go back to having fun and using this as
Yeah.
an addition, right? As a luxury, not a necessity. And so people don't really understand that if you're this far down and then you stop, the second you go back out, you're starting from here.
Yeah.
And it's going to get out of control quick.
And maybe even lower, because when you get a little taste of this God dope and God in your heart and your mind, I've never felt or been so aware of the level of pain and suffering and shame and guilt and remorse than I did 3 hours after I got high that night.
Right.
I never felt any, like I was numb to it all my life, and I just used for so many years. When we have God in a little bit of recovery and that feeling of hope and overcoming and getting our family back and these things that we get back, for me, yeah, it wasn't the same. It wasn't a good feeling. It was straight shame, guilt, remorse, and immediately God put on me figure out why you did this,
Yeah.
why this happened, Shane. And I was grateful enough to live in the basement of my sponsor's house 4 years ago, and grateful enough that God gave me the courage to go up and tell him 10 hours later that I got high last night. And I just started digging in from there and seeking the whys, why I made the choice, and not the choice to drink, but why I made the choices to not continue to praying, why I made the choices to not battle those judgments and resentments and disliking Zoom and my fellows, and taking that control back, right? The defective character, that's why I got high and drunk. I didn't get high and drunk because I wanted to. I didn't get high and drunk because it was fucking a good thing to do. I got high and drunk because of my insecurities, my people pleasing, my ego and my pride. That's why I got high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad you made it back.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm very grateful to be where I am today.
Yeah, you're a super bright light in the rooms.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would love it if we could touch on, because I know my experiences over the years, lots of practice, lots of failure. Not failure. I don't like to say failure.
Yeah.
Mistakes,
Yeah.
right? To learn.
Lessons.
Lessons. Setting expectations and healthy boundaries. For me, I had neither when I came into recovery.
Yeah.
Right? Most of us don't.
Yeah, no.
Part of our defects and the malady and all that. But yeah, like, what are your experiences that, like, do you have anything when I say, like, something that pops in your head about how you learned how to set good expectations or healthy boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah. What pops into my head is relationships. Relationships have been the most work and the most God has shown me about myself. And one relationship in general. Not this last one, but about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was with a woman for 2 years, and that's the first time I really knew I had to set boundaries. I came into this recovery, this world as an egotistical, dark, angry, controlling, manipulating, scary dude prior to recovery. So when I came into recovery, I didn't know how to act. So I was passive. I was shy. I will do whatever you want, people pleaser. And that rolled into my relationships. Most of my life, I was a beast to women. I was an ignorant, domesticating, very, very, very bad man. I was my grandfather. My grandfather was an alcoholic domesticator. Grew up with that for the first 15 years of my life. Hated the man. At 14, I turned into him. So coming into recovery and learning you have to change these things within you, I didn't know how to change them, so I just was a people pleaser. You tell me what to do, kind of. And that relationship, she was an alpha female. And I allowed myself to get treated in very, very toxic, negative ways. So that's the first place I remember I had to set a boundary of, you can't talk to me like this, you can't treat me like this. Yeah. But a specific situation, there was many in that relationship where I had to set boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. All of the experiences that I can think of that were kind of like monumental parts of learning how to set expectations and boundaries, mine were never intimate relationships. They were all sponsee related. Yeah. So many of them. And so for me, also a people pleaser, right? And it was very difficult for me to separate because once I learned about how selfish my behavior was and how self-centered and everything I was already a people pleaser. So learning that and already having this, I felt like I was people pleasing to the max because I'm like, I have to give of myself all of the time. What are you talking about? I just
Yeah,
spent the last 20 years being selfish as shit.
Yeah.
Like this is clearly the right thing to do. And so I already had this defect and then it was just hyperactive.
Yeah.
And so I remember like just things that pop into my head. Getting a sponsee from a room and then picking her up to take her to meetings and everything. Never said anything, never did anything, always offered. And then the first time she said, hey, I want to go to a meeting, come pick me up. I was immediately resentful. I was immediately mad. And I'm like, this bitch thinks that I'm just going to drop and then and I sat there and then I ended up having to reach out on it. And then I learned that I set the expectation that was how it went.
Yeah.
And then I was mad when it wasn't me offering it. And so I remember that one being a very big learning experience. I also remember there was this one lady that I worked with, and it was a very complex relationship. She was the first person that I had worked with that had active mental health issues, right? She was actively working at it, right? She saw someone, she had, prescriptions to help with that stuff.
Yeah.
Her ability to process information was much slower than anyone I had ever met. So doing the work with her was a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
And I remember going into step 5, I think we spent a total over 2 or 3 sittings of 17 hours. And only made it through 4 or 5 people. It was hard.
Yeah.
Now, in this time frame, I had already learned through mistakes, right? The expectations I had learned to set at that point were, I can only match your willingness, right? If you continually cancel on me, then I need to work with someone that wants it because I'm depriving myself of recovery and I'm depriving someone else. And so I've learned all these things I'm going through. And so she had gone through these spurts of pulling back. And then I was afraid to make her upset with me. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I didn't want her to be mad at me. I was a people pleaser. So I would always let it go on longer without saying something because I was afraid she would be upset with me. And then it got so bad, finally, I'm reaching out, I'm asking for help. And I said, hey, I just don't think we should work together anymore because I've asked you for this, 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 and this, and you haven't given me any of these things.
Yeah.
And then so we didn't talk for a while. Then she came back. Oh my gosh, you were so right, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, cool. Did not reset expectations, right? The exact same thing happened. And it happened 3 times over several months. It got so bad where and looking back, I still feel a little guilt. But most of it's gone because I understand I really needed that experience. But I still feel, I don't think that's ever going to, because that was my first real hard one.
Yeah.
I totally crumbled in living in, so I had a problem with confrontation. I had a problem with being able to have hard, uncomfortable conversations. In person, terrifying. On the phone, just as terrifying. So I copped out and I sent her this novel text as to why I couldn't work with her anymore.
Yeah.
And I had given all of these reasons and all of these justifications. And at the time, I thought I was doing it in a loving way. And she responded almost immediately with, okay. And then a day later, she sent me 5 or 7 paragraphs for each point. It was like 12 texts. It was a novel that she sent me back of all of these things. And as soon as I realized, I saw the damage that I had done unintentionally through actions, I immediately reached out to my favorite step 10 person. And I called him, and I'll never forget this. I use this example all the time. I said, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I need your help. I feel like shit. I just ruined this girl. And I could hear the smile coming through the phone. And he's like, you just ruined someone? It's interesting that you think you're that powerful. And I was like, oh, God, I really needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, that was a little egotistical, Jen. A little bit of self there coming out. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. So he's like, what's going on? And I explained the situation. And I was being so hard on myself for feeling like I failed. And I did. And I wish I did this. I should have done that. I should have. And he told me the most beautiful thing that I've ever heard. And I tell it to so many people. He said, Jen, don't you understand that this is exactly what God wanted to happen?
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? Like, how could this possibly? And this was the first time I really understood that God is working everywhere in every aspect of my life every single day.
Yeah.
And he had said, God brought you two together for you to learn this.
Yeah.
And I was like,
True. Yeah.
what? And I had always been so concerned about, like I used to sponsor people. I got a couple people through and then nobody passed for like a year. And I was like, is it me? Am I doing something wrong?
No.
And so he's like, God brings you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. God is going to bring you people to learn these lessons.
Yeah.
He's not going to give you a rock star right away. He's going to give you to people to practice on. Don't worry about not getting someone through. You're supposed to take them up to the point that they get to.
Yeah.
Right? There's something in that. And you're going to learn through experiences of people that aren't ready yet. So that once you have enough experience, when a rock star comes, you're fucking ready for them.
Yeah.
And together your lives are going to transform. And I was just like, oh my God, like what a beautiful way to look at things. And this is why reaching out and talking to other 12-step people is so important, because I like to think that I run a pretty good program. I didn't fucking see that.
Yeah.
All I could see was the guilt and the shame and the remorse of how I handled it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why reaching out to other people in the program is just so crucial. And what a beautiful way, like that conversation shifted and it changed everything for me. Everything. I didn't realize that when things didn't work out the way I was hoping they would, resentment's not huge for me. I have a really good ability to say, I have no idea what's going on in your life. If you're acting like a dick, then you're probably struggling.
Yeah.
Right? But for me, just being able to, like, anytime I constantly thought of myself as a failure. Every time I made a mistake, I'm like, I suck.
Yeah.
I'm terrible. And this conversation really propelled me into the next 2 years of my recovery. Every time now something doesn't go the way I hoped it would, I sit down and I say, okay, what was I supposed to take from this?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to learn here to get better later? It's not about being perfect now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just
God is the good, God is the bad. And that one saying, life doesn't happen to me anymore. It happens for us, and especially in the negative times. Like, I used to, when I first came around, would question, God, why is this happening? And these things weren't happening to harm me, to keep me in a shitty state, to keep me losing jobs and relationships. These things happened to show me a lot about myself, to guide me away from negative jobs and ignorant, toxic places. And relationships. God's guided me away from various toxic relationships today, and in the relationship sense and in the friends and sponsee sense. And those things today aren't bad. Like, I know today that these negative things that happen in my life, God is still there to be found. I just have to seek His will for me in those times, right, and not stay in self and judge and blame and fear and insecurities and me, I can fix it. I can't really fix a lot today. I got to leave those results up to God. If I do the best I can and treat with love, kindness, tolerance, understanding, facing things, forgiving, the rest of the whatever results aren't mine for the choosing, Yeah.
Yeah. Trust, faith, and acceptance.
Yeah.
Trust, faith, and acceptance. When I go over with sponsees, step 5, going through the fear inventory, everything I can put onto trust, faith, and acceptance. I trust that God has my back. I have faith that if I'm doing as I think He would have me, all will work out exactly as it should. And I accept that what is.
Yeah.
And being able to apply those 3 principles to absolutely everything I do. What a game changer, right? And I could have never done that without my fellowship and with the big book and with all the beautiful people around me, and especially having and letting God into my life, right? That's where the transformation really, really happened.
Yeah.
It's just it was interesting. I was just sitting at work yesterday, and I do this every once in a while, but like I was just sitting there randomly. It was a slow day at work, and I just kind of started daydreaming for a minute, and I was just immediately overcome with this sense of gratitude. Like, just overcome.
Yeah.
Right? So much so that I posted it online, right? But I'm just like, sometimes I just can't believe that I came from a place of not being able to get more than a couple of hours.
Yeah.
To now, I never even think about it as this, like, on my hardest days, it's not even a thought. My hardest days are not making myself feel like shit or thinking about drugs and alcohol. My hardest days are, holy shit, what do I have to do to grow from this, right? It's just, what a beautiful place to be. Like, I still can't believe, I remember how suicidal I was. I remember how bad it was. And it's not even a thing anymore. And it's all thanks to God and the steps. Like, it's just, and it's interesting. I remember when I came into recovery the first time, I was not about that God life. I saw the word. I knew better. I knew there was no God. And I threw a temper tantrum. I'm like, great. Like, isn't this typical? I can't recover because I don't believe in God. And so when I got back years and years later, I'm like, shit, that word's waiting for me. But now I'm real desperate. Like, what am I going to do? And I think there's other episodes that I talk kind of a little bit more about that. But I finally got to a place of being able to be willing and just say, like, okay, maybe. And so in doing that, like, I still think it's crazy to me today that I came from a place where I was absolutely sure there was no God, and I didn't care to have one. And today I live a life where God is single-handedly the most important thing in my life. Yeah. Like, single-handedly. It's just, what a better way to live. Like, it's
100%. And I think a lot of that for me was smashing that conception and that prejudice that I had against the God that I thought God was. Because my God is nothing what I thought God was when I was growing up all my life. I was black sheeped at church. I used to go to church with a neighbor, and I always felt like a black sheep. I never felt included. That was my understanding of God, right? That this is how these people would treat you. And that had to be smashed when I first came in. And I was just at such a low, beat-up, fucking surrendering point where I believed my sponsor when he said, bro, it's not that God. This is a new God that we're going to create by going through these 12 steps. And that was just the beginning, right? Step 2 is very simple. Do you believe in something, or are you willing to believe? And then we just move on with the rest of the work. And if I do the work properly, and not even properly, if I do the work and continue seeking doing the work, my higher power will show itself.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, too, that just popped into my head. I remember, the way my sponsor was really smart, and I may have mentioned this on another episode, but essentially we read the material in chapter 4, and she said, do you believe? I said, absolutely not. And she said, are you willing to believe? I'm like, I don't understand what that actually means. Like, if I don't believe, how can I possibly be willing? And so she had said, if I told you that to my core, I knew that there was a higher power working in my life actively every single fucking day, would you call me a liar? And I'm like, you're making it really hard to say no, right? And then I'm like, okay, I believe that you believe that, right? And she's like, okay, that's willingness. That's a start. Yeah. Right? And so, oh my gosh, I totally just lost my train of thought of where I was going to take that. Oh, it was going to be a really good story.
Let it go.
Yeah, let it go. Let it go. But I mean, what a great thing to be able to share with people anyways, right? Is the fact that, my sponsor, she was something else. She's such a great person. I'm so grateful that I worked with her for all the years that I did. But I don't know if I possibly could have been convinced if it wasn't for that kind of... Yeah. Oh, perfect. It came back. There we go. I was supposed to talk about it. So I remember this conversation. Okay. Yeah. So at this point, I said, okay, I can say that I'm willing, but I still don't believe, but I'm willing. So I was in between. She said, I want you to start praying. I don't care what you pray to. I don't care if you believe it's going to work or not. Just start praying. Yeah. When you need help, ask for help. When you don't need help, say thank you. Just start doing that. And so in the beginning of my recovery, because I was court mandated, because I was pushed into it, I struggled with one question that popped in my head all the time. If I didn't have to be here, would I be here? Yeah. And that question plagued me for a really long time. It took me 2 years to realize it doesn't fucking matter the answer. It just matters that I got here. Yeah. But I remember the first time that I actually prayed and asked for specific help from my higher power. Yeah. It was 3:00 in the morning. I was sleeping. I woke up. I just felt awful. I can't remember if I was 5 months sober at the time. Something was going on. I felt like shit, whatever. And I got up and I sat down and I prayed. And I said, God, I can't stop thinking about this stupid question. If I didn't have to be here, can you just please help me? Send me some kind of clarity or sign or whatever it is that I want this. Because there's something, and obviously it was the malady and my addiction and my brain trying to convince me to go back out. There was something holding me back, being like, maybe you don't need to be like. So I was just, it was hard. And I just said, can you just show me a sign that I want this? And I've never in my life had such a fast experience where I went back to bed, 5:30 in the morning, my phone goes off and I'm getting a message from, this is going to be complicated. So I was in treatment with a girl. She got kicked out of another treatment center. This girl was her roommate. This girl messaged me because I had met her through, it was this whole thing.
Yeah.
Didn't know her at all, but she messaged me on Messenger and she was just like, hey, like, I'm struggling. I need your help. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, I relapsed. I'm around my son. I don't trust myself. I need help. And so looking back now, I probably shouldn't have gone because I wasn't supposed to be around anyone in active addiction, right? But my white knight, my wanting to save everyone, I'm like, I'll be right there.
Yeah.
And so I raced there. And I walked in and I walked downstairs and I took one look at her, right? Paranoid, tweaking, stressed, high, not slept, just your typical way too fucked up look, right?
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I walked down the stairs, I took one look at her and I was just right in my face. Oh my God, I never want to go back there.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. I literally asked God to show me a sign of whether or not I want this. And I had it in hours. The important thing to see was that he gives us these things. You just have to be aware of how they come.
Yeah.
Right? If I wasn't looking for that, I maybe never would have seen it.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh my God, I don't want that life anymore. I do want, like, what a beautiful thing. And that was the first time that I really saw God actively there in my life. And now I can, like, I see him everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. It's just such a beautiful thing.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I remember, too, one of my favorite God stories that I'll share. It was so funny. I had this amends that I was supposed to make. This one hurt me. I've talked about this on other episodes, too. This one, there was so much guilt and shame around that one. And I was just too afraid to make it.
Yeah.
And so I stole from a charity. And I was reading Step 9 with a sponsee, and it turns out her parents were the managers of this charity.
Oh, no way. Beautiful.
Yeah, it was just crazy. And so, like, I'm, like, telling the story. She's like, that's hilarious. And I'm like, holy shit. Maybe this is a sign that this is the time. And so she actually asked me if she could come because she wanted to see it, to understand what she was kind of getting into. It was this whole thing. And like, God was there every step of the way. It was so crazy. I was too afraid to walk into that place. I got out of my car, I prayed, and then this girl, like the treasurer, was her stepmom, was walking through the parking lot. Like every single thing about this story, God did all of it. And I was just along for the ride. And I remember when it was all over, just looking up at this guy and being like, oh my God, that was so easy. Why did I make that so hard on myself for so long, right? Yeah. God's trying to help us all the time. We get in our own way. Yeah, I just love having a higher power in my life today.
Yeah, those are beautiful things. I actually just posted a video on amends. I've been doing videos regularly for a few years now, and it's just when God puts these intuitive things in me, or I have some experiences with them, and it was just on amends yesterday or the day before. And it's beautiful how God brings these things to us. I'm able to start one of the biggest amends, the biggest harms, the biggest traumas, the deepest things I've ever done to somebody. She just came back into my life the other day and messaged me out of the blue, years of not talking to her. And I was shocked. I'm grateful today to be where God's put me, to be able to start this amends with this woman that it's the worst thing I've ever done in my life to anybody, and I've done a lot of fucked up shit in all the years I was getting high and in jail. So that's a gift. Like, that's what we're talking about here. We get to mend these things. These people who we harm so much come back into our lives if it's meant to be, and we get to fix that. We get to learn from that. We get to not continue being that person doing those things, to why we have to make this amends. So it's, yeah, I'm just grateful to have start this process of the amends too. The amends is huge. Like our brother in recovery and your sponsor says, amends are huge. Like, this is an amend that this is a harm that I did 17, 27, 37, 23 years ago, that I get to pay back today. And not even pay back, but I get to face, because I did this harmful thing, and for years I blamed her and I didn't take responsibility. So to be where I am today, and be able to take responsibility and clean my side of the street, and this woman to be able to see what recovery and God has done for my life, and to want to be back in my life, it's a miracle, like, and it wouldn't happen without God or recovery. Because I wouldn't be the same person. I would have been the same ignorant, egotistical, judgmental, blaming, fuck the world type of man I always was. So these are the miracles that God gifts us today, if we follow his directions and switch up our lives and change up our behaviors. It's beautiful. I'm still processing the phone call, and the feelings behind it, and I'm just grateful today to be able to make amends to people I've harmed.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's so freeing for us, but it's more important that it's freeing for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they deserve that from us.
100%.
It was interesting too, like when we talk about 6 and 7 and how little literature there is around that, it's because it's all outside of the book. It's all, like experiences and going through life and whatnot. One of the greatest things that our friend in recovery taught me was that if you want to learn how to build character, face all the shit you did, right? Like, why do you think 8 and 9 are right after 6 and 7?
Yeah.
You're agreeing that you've looked at everything in 6 that is questionable about your character, and now you're asking God to help you live a better way. What a better way than by going out and mending the wreckage of your past?
Yeah.
You're going to build character by being accountable and facing all this stuff, and learning about a 9 where 95% of the time the way you think you hurt someone isn't even close to how they were actually harmed.
Yeah.
Being able to shut up and actually let them speak. What a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to work all the steps. All of them.
All of the steps,
all
yes.
of them.
And one of our pillars or people we know in recovery taught me, and I believe in this thing he says. Like, if I want to how do I practically apply 3, 6, and 7 to my life? That's through my favorite step, and that's 10. And I really believe that. I see there's some things that may not go with it, but a majority. If I'm not doing 10, I'm not doing 3, 6, and 7. That's just a fact in my life. When I don't do 10, and 10, I mean not on the board 10. I mean 10 on page 84. That process, that 4-step process, that inner looking, that phoning somebody every time I act out in those ways, that's truly what God's will is for me today. Is hundreds, thousands of situations based in fear, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. And it spreads out so much more than those 4 words, but those 4 words encapsulate thousands of fucking feelings and thoughts and actions and things I do, right? So it's beautiful process.
Yeah. I can't imagine my life without God, the steps, the spiritual principles, my fellows.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, if you've been on the fence, just do it. Pull the trigger. I remember being in the rooms and still having this weird sense of, like, looking at the wall and seeing all 12, and my weird ass addict brain really believed that I would, like, was afraid to do the work because I was going to be, like, changed and not feel like myself anymore. Like, I had this weird, twisted thought, like, this spiritual awakening would be, like, this monumental weird, very terrifying thing. And what I learned was if you just do each one at a time and try your best, by the end, you already are changed. You already are like, there was no monumental, oh my God, like, look at me now. It's like, hey, look, all of this work led me to this point, and now I'm finally not suicidal. I actually want to have a beautiful life, and that all starts with God and helping others. And it's just such a wonderful experience. And, you know, I know there's a lot of stigma about, you know, some people like to call the different kinds of rooms like cults and whatnot. Like, it's just a set of spiritual principles and work that helps lead you to this beautiful fucking life. And I really recommend it.
Yeah. A lot of us don't make it through this journey of recovery, and it's very hard. It's very hard to battle self. It's very hard to be vulnerable and honest. It's very hard to do this inner work. Battling self is a motherfucker.
Yes, it is.
To truly give up self, to truly give up all these things that I thought I knew is very, very scary. But the book tells us we have two fucking options. I can go on with life blotting out all reality, me trying to fucking run the show, or I pick up this spiritual tools laid out at my feet. I had two options, and I think that's where it gets hard for high bottoms. I'm a low bottom junkie, drunk alcoholic from the streets. I don't know if I would have been so desperate to put everything I had into this thing if I didn't hit that scary low spot where I was cutting my wrist 15 times in this one spot, wanting to die, wanting to get high, wanting the pain to stop. But I learned today we don't have to hit that low of bottom. If you're just not happy with your life and alcohol and drugs are causing you more pain, you might be one of us. And I implore that you really dig in, because alcohol and drugs aren't our problem. Work on the spirit, and everything else changes in our lives.
That was fucking beautiful. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
And for all of our non-addict listeners, please don't think that this kind of stuff is not useful for you, right? Living your life on a spiritual plane and trying to be of service to other people is a beautiful life, whether you have an alcohol or drug problem or not.
Yeah.
But it's necessary for us to survive.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful. Thank you very much for the discussion.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. We should do it again.
Yeah, I would love to.
Awesome. What are we going to talk about next time? I don't know yet.
I don't know yet.
Hey, we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.